Welcome to Swayam Prabha series in computer science. In the series, this is a course on artificial intelligence, and we are in the last part of artificial intelligence series, which is generative AI side. And till last class, we have seen about BERT AI, BERT part of it. Now we will move towards generative AI, and being the first session, we will look into prompt engineering fundamentals, and many of them who are interacting with me were asking about the generative AI side, and we wanted to learn AI techniques. And to start with, I thought that this would be a fundamental session. This not only caters to the computer science students, it can cater to anyone who would like to know what prompt is and how to get into AI, and how the topics we'd be covering for the entire session here afterwards would be in this fashion. In this session, we will be dealing with some components of AI. Basically, there are 5 components that we will deal with. Then the different types of prompt, and a small implementation of it with Python, and introduction to agentic AI. And in this course, actually there is in unit 3 there are an agents, multi-agents is specified, but I thought after doing a bit of generative AI and prompts, we will get into the agent stuff, and if time permits, we will do a small implementation with different agent from the generative AI side. Now, to just talk about what prompt engineering is all about, we will start with a basic 5 components of prompt, and the formula that you can see is very simple here, where D, R, C, E, F, D plus R plus C plus E plus F is amazing results. D stands for directive, R stands for role, C stands for context, E stands for example, F stands for format. In this session, we will be going through each of these components in detail. When we say D, D is a directive that will say what to do. So, it has to clearly state the task, and all these components, whatever we say, it is essential for an effective prompt when we give it to an LLM. LLM are as such, as you know, there are different LLMs like ChatGPT, Gemini, Quen, or Llama. There are many LLMs that you would come across, and how to give a prompt so that you get the effective result. That is what this session is all about. And here we are talking about the first part of first component, which is the directive. It clearly says what to do, and we have to be very specific and clear. If you say, see this, the directive is what it actually means. You have to tell the AI what you want. Say an example is write a 7-day workout plan. This is a directive. Directive is a command, do that, and that has to be very specific. The second component is role. Role is assign an expert or a persona. So, in addition to directive, if some prompt require role, that would be all the more better. We would get better result. We would set the expertise according to the role. Say here the role is tell the AI whom it should act as. Say for example, act as a certified fitness trainer. This is one example. The third component is context. Context is the background information. There can be multiple interpretations according to the prompt that is required. So, if we are giving the relevant context or the background information, or who the audience are, what is the type of the situation, it would be all the more better to get the required results. Say the context here would be give background, goal, audience, and also the limitations, what not the prompt should do. Say for example, the goal is fat loss. I am a beginner with limited equipment. So, this is the limitation, this is the background. So, with these information, we can give a context plus the role plus the directive, so that we would get an effective one. The fourth would be the example. Say the example is like we would show, suppose when we are teaching small children, we would show number of examples. Similarly, when we write a prompt, we can show some examples, give the examples of the output style or the tone or structure we want. So, what it actually means, say show the style of the structure, like for example like this format, like do we want it as a table or a JSON format or a bullet points. With this format, say for the same example as the fitness trainer, like the for day workout duration sets, in this format if we specify, we would get back the desired result. The fifth component is the format, which would be how to structure the output. Say that would be specify the output structure, what would be the length, what would be the tone of the format. Say example here would be give it in a table with tips and warm out. So, this would be the output format that we require. And earlier also said the example with the format, both would be ideal. So, the components directive, role, context, examples and format, all these bundle up to form a good prompt structure. And in some cases role may not be needed, in some cases example may not be needed, and a few context may not be needed, or in many cases format may not be needed. So, for which category do we need directive? So, which category do we need to specify everything? So, that we will be explaining, we will be seeing in this session. So, again the tip is, the more clear and detailed the prompt, we would get the more accurate output. And we have to be clear, specific, we have to provide the adequate details and guide the output necessary, and a few would be actually iterative in nature. Like once we get the result, we might have to iterate it a few times in order to get the accurate result. Now, we will go one by one component and see what each one means. The first one is the directive. So, directive is the action verb plus task at the heart of the prompt. It tells model what operation to perform. Without a clear directive, AI just guesses whatever the intent it is. Say the key rules, how to write the directive is the next question. How do we write that? Use the verb plus task, action verb plus task. That is the notion with which we have to start with. Say an example would be summarize, list, explain, translate, compare, rewrite. These are the action verbs that would specify a directive. So, we have to specify the scope, how much does it require, how deep it is to require, for whom, and we have to avoid the vague counselors like tell me about or help me with. These are vague. So, instead of tell me about, we have to be very specific, like summarize, list and including audience. Say a few examples for component 1. This is a weak directive. Tell me about the working of a computer. This is very weak. Instead, a strong would be explain. Instead of a weak directive, this would be good enough. Explain how a computer works step by step for undergraduate students using simple language and 5 bullet points. This is a strong directive, whereas tell me about the working of a computer is a weak directive. And if you give these both into an LLM that you are working, you can see the difference of how it gives. The second component is the role or persona. Persona is the expert. As an expert, we are asking the LLM to be the expert and then give answers according to the role. So, why does it matter? It sets the expertise level. We are narrowing down from the broad perspective, we are narrowing down to the expertise range. It frames that perspective, and it will also get into the communication style, whether it is going to be at the beginner stage or at the advanced stage, and at that role how would an LLM respond, how would it guide, and it would also improve the relevance with respect to what is being asked. Say this is an example, this is a running example that I have taken of teaching, say how computers work to undergrad students. So, this is a prompt that we are giving for the same prompt that we have given earlier. In the first part we gave tell me about the working of a computer. And then we said it is going to be taught for undergrad students. Now we are going to include a role to it. The role is you are a computer science professor teaching undergrad students. So here we are asking the LLM to mimic a computer science professor. Now explain how a computer works step by step for undergraduate student using simple language and 5 bullet points. Now this is the earlier prompt that we have given earlier, except that this is the role that we are giving in addition to the earlier prompt. Now you can see what difference does it make. Like, I am not using the LLM for this session right away. I am asking you to, whoever is watching, please put this prompt into any LLM that you have and see the difference that the prompt, whatever we are going through each prompt, no, step by step, when we are giving, you can see the difference, what the difference it makes. Now, here are a few examples for the role and the use case that we can have. Say the role is you are a nutritionist. So, the use case in this case can be a diet advice. You are a skeptical peer reviewer. This is for the research paper or the scientific papers, the articles that we write. And we can ask the LLM to be the role, to be acting as you are a skeptical peer reviewer, and this can be used for the critical analysis. Third, you are a patient tutor who is going to help a student learn some concepts. So, this for the learning concepts. And the role is you are a startup founder, and where we can get the inputs for the business strategy from the LLM. And another role example would, you are a historian from 2150 years. So, this creates a perspective that the LLM should act as a historian back years ago, say a few years back ago. So, we have so far we have seen the two components. One is the directive, second is the role. Now we are going to see the context, which would include some background information, some target audience for whom the, say, the prompt is being addressed, and what are the constraints or limitations, and the purpose or the goal. So if these are mentioned, then a response to the prompt we would get somewhat accurate. So for the same example of the computer science students teaching how the computer works, this is the information that we give with respect to the context. For background information is, this is an introductory computer science class. See, what we are doing is, for the same prompt that we gave before, this is the prompt that we have. You are a computer science professor teaching undergrad students. Now explain how a computer works step by step for undergraduate student using simple language and 5 bullet points. For the same prompt, if we are giving context, it would be in this fashion. The background information would be, this is for an introductory computer science class. The target audience would be first year undergraduate students with little prior technical background or with no background, who does not know anything about working of a computer. What are the constraints and limitations? We have to use simple English, avoid too much jargon, and keep the explanation simple. What is the purpose or goal with respect to the context? Help students understand the basic functioning of a computer at a conceptual level. What is the relevant data? The data that the prompt addressed should cover input, processing, memory, storage, and output. If we give these details into the prompt, we would get a much better output that we are intending. So, this is about component 3, and if you look at this context, it has all the things, which is the directive, and the role is not given here. The role is going to be the professor who is teaching an undergrad class. The next component is few shot learning or the examples, and in the next session we will be doing a number of types of learning, where we will be going deeper into the types of learning. Here an example of it would be how to mention the examples within the prompt. Say, here include a few examples in the prompt itself of the input and output so that AI can imitate the pattern for new inputs. Say, this is an example that I have given here. The task is to classify sentiment. Example 1, text. The text says the movie exceeded my expectations, sentiment is positive. And example 2, again I am giving another example, and these examples we are going to give within the prompt. Text, I wasted 2 hours on this, the sentiment is negative. Now for the third example, I am not giving the sentiment. What I am saying is, see, example 1 looks like this, example 2 looks like this, and these two examples I am feeding into the LLM, and I am asking the third example, the text, it to be fed, and I am asking the AI to complete this sentiment. So after giving these 3 examples, the AI would give the sentiment of the third text, which is it was okay, nothing special, it has to compute and reply back the sentiment of third. So this is an example of fourth component, which is including examples within the prompt. So if you look at it, so far we have done 4 components. First one is directive, second is role, third would be the context, which would include background information, target audience, constraints, purpose, relevant data, and fourth we are giving some examples within the framework so that we get the accurate output, and fifth is mentioning of the output format as such. So the format, these are some of the format which is given at the left side. The first, the bullet points, which can for quick scanning, the table which can be used for comparisons, JSON or XML which can be used for text data extraction, the step by step which can be used for processes, essay or paragraph for explanation, a code block as output format for programming, and markdown which would be for the documentation. Say an example here is present your answer as a table with columns. Technique, use case, example and difficulty level 1 to 5. So using this is an example of how we give in a prompt, how the output should be structured. So now the question is when to use which prompt. So again I will be giving in detail when to use each of the prompts, just an overall cheat sheet which you can take it and see where you can use directive, when to use it and when to skip. So in directive there are some cases where we can use and skip, and similarly role, context, examples and format, which I will be going through in detail now. So in directive we have to use when there are complex tasks, specific outcomes are needed, and it can be skipped when there are simple questions like the exploratory chat. The role is needed when there is an expertise, a domain specific answers, and we can skip when there is a general knowledge or casual conversation that we converse with an LLM. Third is the context, where it depends upon background and there are specific set of audience or the constraint, and we can skip when it has the questions or the universal topics. Examples where there is a format or style matters or pattern recognition is required, just like how we did for sentiment analysis. We can skip it when there are standard format and AI already knows the pattern, then we can skip. For format we can use when it needs to be parsed, integrated or presented. We can skip when it requires casual reading, flexible responses are okay with our understanding. In those cases, format specifically is not needed. Now, we will go through each of the component, when it is required and when to skip. So these are some of the examples that we have compiled. The left side of it, this describes the different scenario as in academic writing, code debugging, business decision or creative projects. So this is an example prompt that we give. Compare and contrast Marxist and Weberian theories of social stratification in 300 words. highlighting one key similarity and two differences. This is a perfect example of a directive. Why? Because we are using compare and contrast, and it describes the structured academic output. Second example is the code debugging. Here we say identify the bug in this Python function. This identify the bug is a directive. Along with it we say explain why it occurs and provide the corrected code. So this is again a directive. Business decision, evaluate these three marketing strategies with SaaS startup with 50K budget, recommend one with justification. Here comparative analysis, and here we are also giving the constraint where recommend with one justification. And creative projects, generate 5 logo concepts for a sustainable coffee brand targeting millennials. So this again generate 5 logo, this is a directive, and we are saying how it should include a color palette, that we say how the prompt should behave, how the AI should generate the answer. We have seen when the directive is necessary. These are some examples where directive is not necessary. The first component does not make any sense. The first example is the factual query. What is the capital of Portugal? Second is brainstorming. Give me ideas for a weekend project. This is open-ended. This is not a directive at all. Casual chat. What's a good book to read? This is personal preference. Definition check. Define photosynthesis. This is standard knowledge. So these cases the directive is not necessary. The second component, role. When you are the role necessary in medical advice, you are a board certified cardiologist, and why it helps, it ensures accurate, empathetic, jargon free explanation. And because we have mentioned 60-year-old, it can be empathetic, and with no medical background, so it is going to be jargon free explanation. Second would be legal analysis, act as a corporate lawyer. Third, teacher tutor. You are a patient high school biology teacher. Help me understand cellular respiration using analogies. So that would adjust the complexity with the different pedagogical approach, so that when using analogy, the student may be able to understand better. So we are specifying the role as a patient high school biology teacher. Why? Because why the word patient, the AI would repeatedly enhance the student to understand the concept better. Similarly, we can specify the roles in creative writing and conflict resolution right here. And the roles when it is not necessary, here are a few examples. In the general knowledge, who won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Physics? Here the role is not necessary. Simple translation, translate good morning to Japanese. This involves only a mechanical task. A basic math, what is 15% of 240? This does not include any role. We need not specify any mathematics teacher or say a student. It does not matter, because the answer is going to be crisp and the accurate according to this computation. So the role is not necessary here. Quick summaries. Summarize this article in 2 sentences. This is self-explanatory. So the role again here in this case is not necessary. The third component, context. Here are a few examples where context might be needed. One is the personalized advice. Say for example, I am a third year CS student with internship experience in web dev, interested in AI/ML. What skills should I focus? So if you take this prompt, it has the background third year CS students, it's a recommendation to the particular situation, and it has the relevant with relevance of data AI/ML web dev. Again, the second example is the audience specific content, where write a 200-word explanation of blockchain for 5th graders who know that video games are but not finance. So it has again the background, the relevance of data, who the audience are, etc. Okay. The third would be constraint based task. Plan a 3-day itinerary for Tokyo with $500 budget, vegetarian meals and no temples. This case, it has a background, it has relevance of data, and more than that, it has a constraint where it specifies no temples and have $500 budget. It prevents unnecessary suggestions. So, if no temples or vegetarian meals are not given, the AI would give multiple suggestions. Giving these constraint would restrict those values. Again, in the fourth example, multi-step projects, we are building a React app with Firebase authentication, suggest a folder structure that scales up to 10 plus developers. Here again the background information is given and relevance of data along with the constraints, and a multi-step approach is needed. In the sensitive topics, I am discussing another example like climate change with a skeptical relative who work in fossil fuels. How do I approach this respectfully? These are contradicting concepts. So, how does that to be generated with AI? It can also sufficiently give according to the situation. So, these are the when context is not necessary, some of the measures where context is not necessary that you can go through it. And again there is a format of output when it is necessary, and some of the format structure like data integration, when the format would be in the case of presentation, the code, the comparative analysis, and the accessibility needs. Like I am just brushing off these slides, but you can pause it and look at these in detail. And how to decide which type of component to choose, this I will be handling in the next session along with some implementation techniques with the other types of prompt also. We will be doing it in the next session. So, until then, keep working on the prompt and think about the 5 components of prompt when you are giving into the LLM. So, thank you.